One. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Delusions of Grandeur. I am one of your hosts, but today I am here with my friend Boris. Hello, Boris.
Hello.
He hails all the way from Croatia. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome him back to the show. And today we're taking a interlude from our Psycho film discussions, where we are going to be talking about another psychotic person.
Uh,
Well, sort of, kind of, in the movie Identity, which was directed by James Mangold in 2003. Here is my copy of the film. And it stars John Cusack, Ray Liotta, and Amanda Peet in here. And there are quite a few other actors and actresses that I did not mention. But I figured I'd go on record with what IMDb tells us this film is about before we go into our first impressions. So stranded at a desolate Nevada motel during a nasty rainstorm, 10 strangers become acquainted with each other when they realize that they are being killed off one by one. So, first impressions. Why don't you tell me? Was this a first time watch for you, Boris?
I watched it twice today, once earlier and then with you just now before our discussion. My first impressions, I have to say, the movie is very good with some really good plot twists and a lot of details to analyze. I think I would have to watch it a few more times to pick up on all the details because I realized some of it is explained in those newspapers articles in the beginning, which appear on screen for a very short time, so I would have to pause and read them all to see it all and make connections and so on to get the full idea of the character of Malcolm Rivers and uh, the uh, other characters which we are going to explain later. But yeah, I really didn't see the main plot twist coming, where we found out that I don't know if I should say it now, as it's the biggest spoiler.
Oh, well, I had actually first, I think I had actually seen this movie in the theater, believe it or not,
Oh,
when it came out in 2003. I was in high school. I think I had a mentor that was put to me by the state at the time that would take me out to go see movies and whatnot. And this was one of those movies that I went out and saw with him. And I really liked it at the time. It was a thriller, and it had somewhat of a dramatic thing. What I didn't realize later is the story of people on an island that started having stuff happen to them. I didn't realize the connection that they would have on some of our previous discussional films that we've had. Um, so that was when I was rewatching this, I did not make that connection until today. So I'm glad that I rewatched this film, and they somewhat based this character of Malcolm Rivers on like John Wayne Gacy in a way. Um, to be honest, because the way that Malcolm Rivers looks and whatnot, that's kind of how John Wayne Gacy looked like at the time of his death. So, um, but the reason why I wanted us to go on about this film is because um, Psycho, the story of Psycho, kind of deals with a multi-personality disorder type of character, and this
Mm.
was a different kind of film with a different with more than just one multi-personality character. So,
Mm.
what did you think about? Well, you started to talk about Malcolm Rivers as a character, but let's talk about him in detail. What do you think about him as a character?
Well, actually, when I think about it, at least based on what I have picked up during these first two watchings, we actually don't get to know him as much as we get to know his alter egos.
Well, we got to know
Uh,
his psyche, basically his mind. What's going on in his mind, but we don't realize it until later, eh?
Oh, well, yeah, but I have to say they really did some things pretty interestingly. Like when those people are at the motel and when all those things are happening, there are many moments where you kind of feel that the dialogues are a little unnatural and that people in real life probably wouldn't react that way in that kind of situation, but then it all makes more sense when you find out that it's all happening inside one person's head.
Correct. And
Mm.
it, in fact, stars quite a few other people besides John Cusack, Ray Liotta, Amanda Peet. We also have Alfred Molina, Clea Duvall, and Rebecca De Mornay. And Rebecca De Mornay, I think she also starred in the remake of The Shining, if I remember correctly.
Oh,
But
wow.
she's or some of her other film credits are um, well, she starred as Lena in Risky Business, which was a movie she did with Tom Cruise, but she also was um, Neil's in the Neil Simon film The Slugger's Wife, Runaway Train in 1985, The Trip to Bountiful. She was Helen McCaffrey in Backdraft 1981, and The Hand That Rocks the Cradle in 1992. In 93, she was in The Three Musketeers, Never Talk to Strangers in 95, and then finally she was in Identity in 2003. She went on to play in Lords of Dogtown, Wedding Crashers, and Mother's Day, which is a remake of a trauma film from the 80s, but it was filmed in 2010. Um, so, but she, like I said, she played Wendy Torrance in the miniseries adaptation of The Shining in 1997.
Huh.
But in here, um, Rebecca De Mornay, I believe, played. Let's see, she in here she played Carolyn Suzanne, which I believe is the mother of the young child, which gets well. Let's kind of go and run down this plot real quick here. So the film begins with a poem, um, which I believe is called Antigone. Um,
Uh, I think I
It
read
begins
that
with a
title
poem
somewhere.
being said. As I was going up the stair, I saw a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there. I wish he'd go away. One character claims to have written this poem, and it is really a poem titled Antigone-ish by William Hughes Mearns. This poem was also turned into a popular song, giving it widespread attention. So,
Hmm.
what do you think about this beginning here, where we're seeing um, the character of uh, Alfred um, Molina,
Well, uh,
playing the character of Dr. Malik, where he's going through all these different papers and different
uh,
murders that this, because apparently um, we are introduced to a character by the name of Malcolm Rivers, who is a patient at a psychiatric ward, and it's like the night before he's supposed to be terminated on death row, I guess.
yeah,
So
something like that.
some people are called in the middle of the night, including the judge that sat on the case, and they all adjourn in some meeting room somewhere, and they begin to talk about the murders that have happened, and this journal that has come to light that was like stashed away somewhere and misfiled or whatnot. But apparently, in this diary, apparently there are several different identities.
Uh,
um, what do you think about this backstory? Because this is kind of a backstory that kind of leads us into the stories that we see happening start to happen.
well, actually, I have to say that beginning was the reason why I found the major part of the movie a little confusing because before I went to watch it, I knew it was supposed to be about this dissociative identity disorder. And yeah, the beginning was about that, but then we suddenly see a bunch of new characters and as far as we see at that point, none of them has anything to do with what we saw at the beginning. So I was just watching and trying to figure out what any of this has to do with the dissociative identity disorder. And yeah, only later when we found out that, spoiler alert, that all of it was happening inside Malcolm's head and that all the characters we had been watching were his alter egos. That was when things started to make more sense.
Well, yeah. Much later do we realize that evidently these are people that were associated with the murders that he had actually committed, but only one of these identities was in fact the murderer. And but before we get into that, let us go back. So after we realize, okay, these guys are all journeying for this thing, that's when the other story begins, and we're brought to this no-tell motel in the middle of Nevada, and all of a sudden the door bursts open, and a dude with with supposedly a body, and it's been raining, comes in, and he's like, I need some help. I need uh, I need some I need to use your phone or something like that, and that's when it goes into how that accident happened, and then uh, 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 they realize that they had run over a heel that was in the middle of the road. The mother gets out. She starts to see if the father needs help, and then what do we know? An accident happens. So why don't you tell me a little bit about this accident that happened here?
Well, those scenes were pretty interesting, telling part of the story out of the chronological order. First we see, yeah, when they run over a shoe, and then no, first when this guy runs into the motel with a wounded woman. Then we see what happened, how she got wounded or hit by a car, and then we see that scene from the point of view of the driver, who is this guy Ed Dakota, and
Well,
yeah,
I know that I felt watching that kid back away, and then seeing her back away, and then all of a sudden, boom! Did you think something was odd that the kid would back up like that, and then you know?
well, at the beginning, I wasn't paying. I didn't notice that at the beginning, but one thing that did grab my attention was when Edward was trying to get an ambulance, and he was like going from one person to another, asking for a cell phone and so on. But in saying there was a wounded woman who needed help, but I thought he was acting surprisingly calm for in a situation like that. I would have expected him to be more in panic when someone out there is dying and he is supposed to get help. And that's
Well, supposedly he was like his character was like he was a cop at one point in time, so I actually didn't find his behavior out of the normal because if you're an experienced cop or if you have been an experienced cop, you're common in these types of situations,
hmm,
and oftentimes you're someone that is able to help um, the situation more than hinder the process. Whereas you could see the father, he seemed to be more of a timid, a very soft spoken person. You wonder how the hell he got to be married to this woman to begin again with, let alone have a well. What we found out later was his stepchild.
yeah.
But he seems to be a very timid person. Seems to do everything by the rules and whatnot, and he's just panicking like a motherfucker here. So, um, but what do we think about this? His character, the father that we find here. I mean, the first glance we see him bringing in a wounded woman, and then we see him driving, and when he gets the flat tire, he's repeating over and over to himself how to pull the car over to a stop, like
Uh,
like he's never experienced it before.
yeah, well, there are many such scenes when we kind of wonder why someone is acting the way they are, but then in the end, well, at least that was the impression I got. I thought it was all to be attributed to the fact that all of it was happening in someone's head, that it wasn't real.
Oh yeah. So, what do you think about the mother character the one that gets injured? Um, do you think that she did okay?
Well, yes, the actress did a good job playing the role, but as far as the character goes, we didn't really get to know her much as she spent most of her time on screen in bed until she died.
Oh yeah. So the next person we get to be introduced to is the young lady who evidently had left the heel in the middle of the road. What did you think about Paris?
Well, that scene at the beginning was funny when things started to fly out of her car and she couldn't get them all. And
Well, and she
uh,
was looking for this gold lighter that she had stuck in her underwear. So uh, while she was driving, I mean, was that necessarily a safe thing for her to do?
well, probably not.
I don't think so. But in any case, the suitcase flew open with all of her underwear, and a heel fell in the middle of the road, and that's kind of how that happened. Well, but anyways, right after that, we get to see the moment with the limo driver and the actress that evidently had just left a set. You know the kind, the kind that seems to be very rich and hoity, and she's on the phone with her agent or some shit like that, and her reception gets cut off, so she asks for Dude, the limo driver, who was played by John Cusack, um, uh, that to get her phone. He takes his eyes off the road. He goes and tries to look for this phone that he does not find. And what do you know? You see that he hits something, that something rolls up onto his windshield, and he actually stops. And then she's like, "Why are you stopping? Then you actually take responsibility for your actions." And
Uh,
he's like, "Ma'am, I'm going to stop." You
yeah.
know, he's um, I mean, he obviously feels responsible for the action, so he stays, and um, he assesses the situation. And um, what do you think about this whole scenario here? Did you think that he was doing the right thing? Did you think that she was doing the wrong thing? What do you think?
Well, yeah, he definitely did the right thing when he went out to see what he could do to help. Her behavior at the beginning, before I knew the whole story about these characters, her behavior kind of surprised me. Like, no matter how self-centered person you are, as she seemed to be, you don't just when you find out that someone got hit by a car as a result of you distracting the driver, you don't just you don't act like you just don't care at all unless you are I don't know an extreme psychopath or something. And yeah, I was kind of taken aback by her not caring about the accident at all. Uh, but then, like I said before, it made much more sense when we found out that none of it was real in the first place.
Oh yeah. I mean, you end up eventually meeting all this assortment of people who end up at the same place at the same time, um, very quickly here. I mean, as soon as they tell Larry, which is apparently the guy who is running the motel at this moment, and then of course you got Ed Dakota, Carolyn Suzanne, Officer Rhodes, who eventually shows up with his convicted murderer by the name of Robert Maine. You have Paris, Nevada, the prostitute, the newlyweds, Lou and Ginny, uh, Istiana, and the York family, which are George, Alice, and their 9-year-old son, Timmy, um, who are in crisis because Alice has been struck by Ed's car. So now that these people are all here, um, what do you think about the situation as it progresses?
Well, like I said before, it kind of took me a while to figure out who is who, as we were introduced to many characters in a very short amount of time, and pretty much confused throughout a major part of the movie, and uh,
Which is understandable. I mean, it is a confusing plot twist. I mean, you have all these people in the same place at the same time, and suddenly people start to die, and you don't know who the killer is. And one person who is a convicted killer escapes, at least so far that you see,
yeah.
and there are some interesting plot twists. I mean,
Uh,
what happens to Caroline Suzanne?
yeah, she gets killed, and at that point, it seems like the escaped prisoner is the one who killed her. But
Well,
I kind of.
obviously the first person to go is the most annoying. uh, but Caroline Suzanne, she's a washed-up actress, and she's still trying to connect with apparently her agent or whatever. So she ends up going outside her room, taking her shower curtain with her, and she goes, and this is a funny moment because she's trying to get bars for her phone, and you can obviously tell she's an older woman, and she's obsessed about getting the bars for her phone, and she's like, oh wait, one bar, oh, two bars, oh, I had
Mm.
it, you know, kind of a thing. It's like, goodness gracious, woman, there is more to life than phone bars.
Indeed.
I mean, that's basically her character the entire time, because she has lost connection with whoever she was talking to, and that's what she's obsessed about doing. And what do you know? She's out there by her lonesome, and well, she's obviously in the open areas of where apparently someone wants to kill her. So, and obviously heads will roll. So why don't you tell us exactly what happens next?
Oh, yeah, her head was found in a laundry machine by. Was it Edward who found her, or was it Rhodes? Or
Yeah, because he started to find like her earrings on the pavement floor, and he followed the trail of her stuff because evidently whoever killed her had left a trail.
yeah.
And he starts hearing a sound in the laundry room, and he starts turning off the ones that are going, and he opens it up, and we get kind of a gruesome sight. Hey,
Oh, yeah, that was kind of a jump scare.
and then of course Ray Liotta's character comes in. He's evidently shown up, which we haven't talked about this entirely yet. Apparently, he's one of the second last people to show up at the motel, and apparently he is carrying a convicted killer, and he is posing as this policeman who is taking him in, and for all intents and purposes, he comes off to us as a police officer. You know, he shows his badge, and he acts kind of, like he's superficial and all that jazz. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
so we have no reason not to believe him at this point in time. What do you think about his character? His character, I think he plays, is called Rhodes.
Yeah. There was this pretty good plot twist about him later on when we find out that he wasn't really a cop. That was pretty surprising. But
Yeah, that was a different bit of a twist, but he was still not our killer.
yeah, yeah, that was definitely the most surprising part. And yeah, one thing that I found interesting was that they had this convicted killer who was, at first, he was suspected to have killed characters in the movie, but to me it was obvious that it wouldn't be him because it would be too easy that way to
Oh yeah,
solve the mystery.
it would have been too easy. But we also get two other characters who end up showing up. We get Ginny and Lou. Ginny is played by Clea Duvall, and Lou is played by William Lee Scott. Now, Clea Duvall, she's been in a number of films over time, probably in some of my favorites, to be honest. But
Oh,
she also played in another a film that was directed by this particular director, and that was Girl Interrupted in 1999, which is later um, than this film, I think, or actually, it's a little earlier than this film, but she was in that one. She was in The Astronaut's Wife. She was in The Faculty in 1998, which was a interesting film. She was in one episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which doesn't
oh.
surprise me. She's kind of a gothic kind of a chick, and she was in two episodes of ER. But I guess when she was fairly young, she played in a movie from 1996 called Little Witches, where she played Kelsey.
Oh,
So,
cool.
but in any case, but oftentimes she'll end up showing up in films. I mean, she was in See Jane Run, Ghost of John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars, 13 Conversations About One Thing, and then of course Identity. Oh, she was in 21 Grams. That's cool. She was in the um, remake of Helter Skelter in 2004 as Linda Kasabian. She was in The Grudge as Jennifer. She was, oh, that's why I remember her so much. She was in a TV series that was cut so damn short called Carnival as Sophie. It had like 2 seasons, and so many people were disappointed that that show was canceled. It was basically about a carnival circuit where it had a bunch of freaks, um, you know, uh, and it seemed like it was going somewhere. So, but they canceled it. Other than that, I think that's about it that I think I want to talk about her particular character. But Ginny and Lou are apparently a relatively recently married couple, and we find out
Yeah.
that he married her because he thought she was pregnant. Oops. Um, was she, in fact, pregnant?
No, she wasn't pregnant. She had apparently faked her pregnancy and somehow faked the pregnancy test being positive.
I think she married him because she loved him. and she wanted him all to herself. But she could because she was put in this situation. Um, she had no choice but to tell him the truth. So
Yeah, actually, those two had a somewhat fleshed out backstory with the guy supposedly having an affair, and they even mentioned some other character who was supposedly the one who revealed the affair to Ginny, if I remember correctly.
yeah, and he
And
tried to deny it like the little bitch he was, but we all could see what kind of a person he really was. Anyways, he was kind of a sleazy person to begin with, obviously because he was eyeing the prostitute as she came in, and he had no problem letting her inside the car when they
yeah.
took him back to the motel. And he definitely seemed more interested in Paris than he did his own wife, especially since when she was freaking out, he didn't go over there to console her, did he?
No.
But one of the backstories that I actually thought was very, very emotional was John Cusack's character Ed,
Oh,
when he had a moment alone with Paris, and she called him an interesting cat. Or a mysterious cat or something like that. And
something like that. Like,
he began to tell her kind of about him, that he was once a cop, and he had a jumper at one point in time, and she was a young Mexican girl, and you're trained to say specific things to help stop people from jumping, but he hesitated for a moment, and she saw that, and she evidently jumped, and it kind of ruined his life, supposedly. So I thought that story was could very well be believable. He was very serious about it. I think he was the more fleshed out character because he still had that cop in him. He still,
mm,
which is why he wanted to help. And I think that's
mm,
why when he dies, I think that's why when he actually dies is like you feel something for him.
indeed.
What do
And
you think about Ed's character?
well, I think yeah, like you said, that backstory really does make him a better fleshed out character, and one we can really sympathize with. But one thing that grabbed my attention later on when we found out that all these people were alter egos of Malcolm Rivers. One thing that grabbed my attention here was how he knew some details about those people's lives that an ordinary person possibly wouldn't know. Like, I mean, for example, he somehow knew what things are like for a policeman when there was this whole backstory of Edward, or he also knew about signing contracts and all the things the actress was dealing with, or how to fake a pregnancy test and such things. Like, when you think about it, if all those things were happening to characters inside Malcolm Rivers' head, it means that he himself from somewhere had to know all those things, how all those things work. It kind of makes you wonder where he could have learned all that. And
Well, and each of these characters were fairly fleshed out. I mean, to a certain extent. I mean, up until later is when we realized that Rose was in fact a totally different person. But most of these other characters were fleshed out. So having them as identities with such detail, what even if this person was on death row, this from a doctor's point of view is like a medical not miracle but a wonder
mm,
because this man has had like 10 fleshed out people inside his brain for the last 4 years. Okay. He is evidently you know gone over and over them in his mind to the point where, in fact, where he thinks they're real, that they're real people in his head. So
indeed.
um, and to find out that they're interweaving this with a story where they're actually being introduced to each of these identities as the case is being explained to these other people who are out in the middle of the night. The fact that the reason why they're being murdered off in his head is because they're trying to track down which one of these identities is in fact the murderer, so that they can tell the person in charge that there is no one left. The killer is no longer there. So the fact that they missed the one throughout the entire scenario is a fact. That not having dealt with anything like this before, how could that doctor have known that the entity or the identity of that person that has not come forward yet. I mean, although, to be honest, all of those identities were supposedly down there in that diary.
uh, yeah,
So
actually. Huh.
you almost wonder, okay, how could they have missed little Timmy through all this? Being the identity in which was the perpetrator of these murderers from the beginning. You know,
Yeah, especially because I think there was a moment when someone said that the diary entries were made. I think they said they were made just before the murders took place, if I remember correctly.
like four
And
months, like 4 months before the murders took place. So,
aha, oh,
or
I get it. But
something like
yeah, that kind of made me wonder if all those personalities were adding diary entries. How come those
that. Well,
diary entries
and
didn't help them figure
and
out
at
who?
that point in time, I think the doctor had said there were 4 or 5 identities that were written down in that journal. They didn't probably know how many identities were or it in fact existed. For all the intents and purposes, that identity of that murderer um, may not have come forward because it had not been created as of yet, or no one had ever gotten down to the bare grits of his mind set. So once all of those others were out in the open and confronted, there were only 2 identities left, and which one was weaker?
Uh, yeah, you mean at the very end?
Yeah,
Uh,
at the very end, when right after we see Ed die and say,
Oh,
"I saw
yes.
you in an orange grove,"
Uh,
which were
y-
weird words, anyways. But she ended up, almost making it, but she didn't realize that Timmy, little Timmy, little tiny Tim, um, had tagged along for the ride and was like, "I'm the dominant identity. I'm going to kill you."
Eh, yeah, well, that's actually a very interesting final solution to the mystery for many reasons. First, because throughout the movie, as he is just a little boy, you don't really suspect him to be a killer. And
Well, and they did a pretty good job of having a whodunit atmosphere around with the characters, because even Larry had a skeleton in his freezer.
mm, yeah,
Which
yeah.
turns out evidently Larry had evidently found the body of the owner of this motel, already dead. So all he did was put his body in the freezer and just take up the reins. And he didn't have a dime to him at the moment, so he just took the money and took up ownership as if he was the in fact owner of the place. What did you think about Larry's character?
Well, I kind of felt sorry for him because it was to us as the audience, it was kind of obvious that he wasn't the killer, but they didn't believe him and everything.
What did you think about the escaped convict?
Oh, well, at the beginning, I actually paid quite a bit of attention to him because it was said at the beginning that there was someone to be executed for being charged with murders. So I
Well,
thought,
and he when he escaped across the expanse of grass, and when he went into what he thought was a totally different area, he found he was back in the exact same place that he had escaped from, or at least somewhere nearby. So he was like, "Huh,
hmm,
what the fuck?" Because he couldn't escape. Like he had tried to escape. He thought he had found a totally different place that was not near the motel, but it just so happens that he had found himself in the diner, and he looked out the window, and who did he see? He saw Ed. But when he was trying to escape, you could see that he was far from the motel. How the hell did he end up far from the motel, and then he goes into this place, and it just so happens to be smack dab right near the motel? You know?
yeah. Yeah, I guess that's another indication that the whole thing is just someone's imagination.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite an imagination to have the escape convict try to escape, and he just doesn't escape. And then,
Yeah,
of course,
for
they tie him up, and then he gets killed somehow, or at least we think he does.
yeah,
And the father, the stepfather, well, his death was kind of accidental, but that makes them think that Larry did it. It's like pointed the finger, like, who did it? Who did it? Who did it? Did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do
Mm.
it? Which kind of brings me back to the Agatha Christie and then there were none kind of thing. because
Yeah, it was even
it's
mentioned in this movie.
yeah, it was kind of mentioned, although not really mentioned. And Wikipedia even says here that it's not a direct adaptation of Agatha Christie's, and then there were none. But the story draws from its structure of the novel. 10
Yeah.
strangers arrive at an isolated hotel, become temporarily cut off from the rest of the world, and are mysteriously killed off one by one. So,
Indeed.
and the interesting thing is the film uses the reverse chronology structure, as we mentioned. It goes backwards to go forwards again, and then backwards to go forwards again. So
Yeah, that was probably one of the reasons why I was kind of confused.
but in a way, I guess when everything is all put together, and we realize that these I mean, it went. I like the fact that they used the hotel keys as to show that each of the victims were what number they were in accordance to the identities of this multi-personality disorder.
Yeah,
So
that was definitely a creative detail.
every time
Yeah,
someone died, they started to realize that each of them had a hotel key.
yeah, it is kind of like in, and then there were none when every time when someone got killed, one of those figures was broken.
Correct. which
Mm,
was which was very cool. So, I mean, each of those 10 little Indian figurines or whatnot. So, and there are actually still a few more 10 little Indian type stories that we'll have to we'll have to uh, check out down the road too, because there were several adaptations of this uh, Agatha Christie story. But I like the fact that we went on about this one, because even though it had to do with a psychotic killer, it also is connected in a way to, and then there were none in some of the others that we've watched. So,
mm,
in a sense,
Indeed.
but what did you think about the overall plot? Once everything came and fell into play, did you understand it a little bit more after you saw and completed the film?
Well, I did understand it a little better, but I think there is still a lot of details that I haven't picked up,
Like
and
what?
I think I'm sorry. What did you say?
Like what? Per se, are you still confused about?
Well, for example, at the beginning, like I said before, there are all these newspapers articles which elaborate on the backstory of Malcolm Rivers, and those articles are on screen for a short time, and unless you pause the movie, you don't really get to read them entirely. But from what I understood, if you did read them, then all these multiple personalities would make more sense. You could make connections between them and details from Malcolm Rivers' backstory and
I
figure
think
out.
you're left up to the imagination as far as to the victims of Malcolm Rivers, and I think the fact that all of these personalities and identities are in his head, that we find out later, are in fact like some of the people that he may or may not have murdered in the past. It's possible,
Mm,
and I think that's
possibly.
what we're kind of left up to imagining. Each of these people might have been somewhat related to some of the murders that he has in fact committed.
Well, it's a possibility, but like I said, it would be interesting to go back and pause the movie and those newspapers articles and read them all. Well, at least all that was shown on screen, and try to make the connections and see what comes up. If you see what I mean.
I see what you mean. um, as far as the verdict that they did, are you surprised that they let him go and be transferred, Malcolm Rivers?
Well, no, I wasn't surprised, and if it wasn't for the fact that the murderous personality was not really destroyed as they thought, if it wasn't for that, I would actually think that's a decent ending and a decent conclusion to the story. I mean, if a person did what they did under such circumstances, I mean, as they said at the end of the movie, it was his body that killed those people, but not his mind, and therefore it seems rather fair that they would submit him to a psychiatric treatment rather than kill him.
Very true. Well, and I didn't really speak too much on Alfred Molina's as an actor. Now, he first, I guess, what I would say is he started out on a TV series called The Losers in 1978. But the first time that I think that he actually kind of was seen on screen was as as Satipo in Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was an Indiana Jones movie, and then the next time that I remember seeing him, he played Caesar in a movie called Lady Hawk, which eventually our Inside Movies Galore will be talking about shortly, probably next week.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
I guess he played Manifesto, Not Without My Daughter, American Friends, Enchanted April, Angels, which it was a TV movie. Screen One was a television series. Played Tony Hancock, a bunch of different characters from 1989 to 1992. The Trial, When Pigs Fly, Cabin Boy, White Fang 2, Myth of the White Wolf, as Reverend Leyland Drury. Maverick, he played a character called Angel, which was a Western comedy with Mel Gibson in 1994. He played in a movie called Hideaway, which was based on a Dean Koontz novel in 1995. Let's see, Dead Man. He was a trading post missionary. I think that was with Johnny Depp as an Indian for some reason, which wasn't his first role as an Indian either. The Man Who Knew Too Little, Boogie Nights. He was Rahad Jackson. The Imposters from 1998. He was Sir Jeremy Burton. Not sure I remember that one entirely, but he's been. He also played Doctor Ock in Spider-Man, and so on and so forth as time went on. He was a voice in the Wild Thornberrys, the TV series once. He was in a movie called Pete's Meteor. He was in Dudley Do Right as Snidely Whiplash. Let's see. He was in Chocolat as Comte de Renaud. He was in a 2001 a version of Murder on the Orient Express as Hercule Poirot. He was on Texas Rangers as John King Fisher. He was in Frida as Diego Riviera. Undertaking Betty, Brahm and Alice, the TV series My Life Without Me, and that's up to when he was in Identity. But he's been in quite a few other films, As You Like It, The Da Vinci Code, The Hoax, The Moon and the Stars. Let's see, Silk, The Little Traitor, The Ten Commandments, Nothing Like the Holidays, The Lodger, which was a 2009 film. That was an interesting film. He was in the Pink Panther as Pepperidge. Pink Panther 2, that is. The Sorcerer's Apprentice. He was one of the wizards there called Horvath. And Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time movie. He was Sheikh Amar. So, he was a voice in the Johnny Depp movie Rango as Roadkill. He was in a version of The Tempest as Stefano. He was in Law and Order LA, the TV series, a movie called Abduction as Burton. Harry's Law, the TV series, Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson a couple of times. And so on and so forth. So that's a little bit of his. And in Monsters University later on, he played Professor Knight as a voice. In Poe, he played Graham, a husband in the segment called The Black Cat in 2013, which is, I think, an anthology of sorts. So, dealing with Poe, Edgar Allan Poe, and Justin and the Knights of Valor as a voice called the Reginald. And Cosmos: A Space-Time Odyssey, a TV miniseries documentary, The Elder Scrolls Online video game. Abner Tharn, he played the voice of. And so on and so forth. Oh, he played the Fairy King's voice in Strange Magic.
Cool.
Interesting. So, in any case, I think that's all that I really want to talk about his acting stuff. What did you think about the Doctor, the Good Doctor, in here? His character role. It wasn't very much.
Yeah, even if we didn't get to see much of him, I actually think he is probably the most tragic character in the end because he was the one who was the most determined to prove that Malcolm Rivers was a mentally ill man who should be in a psychiatric hospital and not.
He was the most trying to prove that he was not in charge of his. He was not the one in charge of the killing, and that to make sure that the identity of the killer was in fact gone from him. So
yeah, and his attempts to save Malcolm Rivers from being executed is what eventually gets him killed. So yeah, that's why I say he is the most tragic character here.
which is why one of my favorite parts in here, I think, is when we get John Cusack coming through in this meeting, where he's like trying to speak to the identity of Ed, to try to confront these other identities and to kind of tell him that he's to ask him for his help in trying to make sure that whatever reality that he's seen, the killer must not survive. The murderer that they are looking for in fact, is that it shows its face, that it shows its true identity to them, to show to the rest of them that there is no more murder. You know,
Yeah.
what do you think about that scene there?
Uh, I'm sorry, I had a glitch. Can you repeat what you
What did
said?
you think about that scene there?
Uh, you mean the scene when uh, Malcolm Rivers or the little Timmy in control of his body when he kills the doctor? Is that the scene you meant? I'm
I
sorry, I
mean the
couldn't
scene
distinguish it
where
all.
Where we see Ed's face. Um,
Oh,
to,
that one.
yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've been having glitches, so I didn't manage to distinguish it all. Yeah, that was actually probably my favorite scene because that's when the biggest plot twist of the movie is revealed, and also when things start to make more sense. Edward looks in the mirror and he sees Malcolm Rivers' face, and then we find out that all those things we saw, what happened in the motel, that all of it was happening inside Malcolm Rivers' head. And yeah, that was pretty good.
So you'd actually put that as your favorite scene?
Well, uh, yeah, either that or when we find out that the little Timmy was the
That's
real
my favorite
killing
scene
personality.
because she's raking something in something in the ground, and what does she find?
And
The number one hotel key, and she's like, "What the fuck?" She stands up, and there's the kid. You know, and then it
yeah,
goes through that whole flashback scene of showing that he was the one behind all the murders, and he was the one that you should have looked out for in the end. In the end, it's the quieter ones that you got to look out for. and
yeah,
and
and that's
and the one that the least one that you would have thought was in fact the killer.
mm, indeed, and that's very interesting because before we went live, I read an article which explains the plot a little better, and it says that we wouldn't think that a 9-year-old would be a killer, and that if the movie was well, if that part of the story was set in a realistic environment and not in someone's imagination, that in that case it would be rather unrealistic for a 9-year-old to be a killer. But on the other hand, I'm not sure if that's true because that reminded me of another movie I saw.
Little Damien.
Oh, oh, Damien. Well, no, that's you mean the Omen. Uh, well, no, that's not the one I thought because in the Omen, well, at least in the first one, well, okay, now I will spoil the Omen a bit, but yeah, in that movie, the only, as far as I remember, the only person who gets directly attacked by Damien is his foster mother, and at that point, Damien was being controlled by Mrs. Baylock, so. No, I wouldn't really think that Timmy is like Damien, but he reminded me more of the movie The Good Son, if you are familiar with
I
that
am
one.
familiar with that one.
Uh, then you know
Macaulay
what I
Culkin
mean.
and his I think he was the bad son. But I think Elijah Wood was the other kid that played in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Very young Elijah Wood, before he was Frodo Baggins.
Yeah, in that one, in the end, he turned out to be the good son, although he wasn't the biological son of that family.
or something along the lines of like the bad seed. I don't know if you've
He,
ever seen that particular movie with Patty McCormick.
no, I haven't seen it. I have heard someone mention it, but I haven't watched it.
Well, we'll have to watch it one of these days. Anyone who's anyone one has to see the bad seed. That is
Uh,
that is a crime. Of
yeah,
course, there's
I
also a
believe
movie
so.
called The Others or The Other, which I think I still have to get a copy of, but we'll have to check that out down the way. That's of an entity. A kid. His brother dies when he was very young, and he keeps seeing his brother, and his brother is very evil, wants to do evil things. um,
Oh,
well, the spirit of his brother or whatnot, and he keeps doing things that get him in trouble. But other than that, yeah, my favorites. I have several favorite scenes. I mean, I like the fact that uh, uh, I liked the part where Jake Bussey's character was sitting there and he was like, "What you got in the freezer? Hey man, what you got in the freezer?" And he's like, "Shut up, man! I can really kill you."
yeah,
But in that case, I mean,
that kind of.
I have I, I have several, you know, several scenes that I like, but that's one of them, and the flashbacks of, and I just think the whole poem that is said in the beginning and then the middle and the end, that I saw a man that wasn't there, you know, he
The,
wasn't there again today. I wish he'd go away. Poem. Um, that poem is very weird. So every time I think of that poem, I think of this movie. So,
well, that makes sense.
but did you have any other favorite scenes from this movie?
Hmm, well, I'm not sure, but I did want to mention one thing when you mentioned the fridge, and we saw a dead body fall out of the fridge, and then when we find out that all those people were alter egos of Malcolm Rivers, now that you mentioned it, it made me wonder what if that. Dead body was also another alter ego at one point and
Well,
got killed.
maybe it was. Maybe it could have been a connection to like one of his victims or whatnot. It could have been. I mean, you
Hmm.
never know what goes on in the mind of a psychotic killer. So
Yeah, definitely.
the fact that it all happened at this like motel, kind of similar to our Bates Motel that we've been talking about lately.
Yeah, I was reminded of that as well.
So, in a way, this film has a connection to a lot of things. So, um, I just thought this was an interesting segue and into, the whole thing. Oh, and I think one of my other favorite scenes in here was when John Cusack's character he was trying to he was taking all of his actresses, the one that he was driving, all of her stuff out of the car, and she wouldn't move. He just went in there and carried her out, put her on the doorstep, and she was still shouting at him. That whole scene there. I don't know why, but I kind of laugh at that moment because you don't expect it. You didn't expect him to take that haughty actress out of the car, carry her to the doorstep, and she's still screaming at him. And she's like,
Yeah.
"That's my car," but she had a very haughty, very rich, very condescending tone, and I didn't really miss her when she went. So, um, but it was pretty gruesome to see her head in that washing machine. That was,
Y-
yeah,
Yeah, that was. I would say that was probably the most shocking moment of the movie because
that
I really didn't see it coming at all.
and the part where the stepfather was hit and crumpled. I mean, the mother getting hit, that was kind of like a quick thing. It was kind of like a moment, but it was kind of she's still alive. He stitches her neck up, and supposedly she's still alive. But later we find out that in that flashback that it was the kid that smothered her to death. She was still alive in that other room. So that was.
Uh, yeah. I when I said when they found the head in the laundry machine, I say that was the most shocking moment because it was a bit of a jump scare. Like I didn't expect it, and it got me a bit off guard the first time I watched it.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Just looking here. Okay, so let's see. Oh, the music is by Alan Silvestri of this particular film. I'm just seeing what else he's done. Okay, so he has done. Oh, okay. So he's been the composer of a lot of things. Uh, he was a composer of The Amazing Dobermans, Let My Puppets Come, The Fifth Floor, 3 episodes of Starsky and Hutch in the 1970s. Chips, he was the composer of many of the episodes of the TV series Chips. T.J. Hooker, 1 episode. Manimal, he was composer of 5 episodes of that. He was the composer of 1984's Romancing the Stone, Fandango, Cat's Eye, which was a Stephen King anthology. He was the composer behind Back to the Future in 1985.
Ooh.
Summer Rental, the Clan of the Cave Bear, Delta Force, which was I think it was with Walker Texas Ranger dude, Chuck Norris.
Oh, cool.
American Anthem, Amazing Stories, Flight of the Navigator. I don't know if you remember that one, but I certainly do. That was a Disney film in 1986 that had an alien that was called Max, and he was he came down in the silver look. We'll have to go into that one when we do an alien type stuff.
Cool.
A movie called No Mercy, which I actually have sitting right over here. Let's see, Critical Condition, Outrageous Fortune, Predator, Overboard, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Mac and Me, My Stepmother is an Alien, She's Out of Control, The Abyss, Back to the Future Part 2, Downtown, Back to the Future Part 3, Young Guns 2, Predator 2, Back to the Future Part 2, the video game, Shattered, Back to the Future, the ride, Soap Dish Dutch, Ricochet, Father of the Bride, Two-Fisted Tales, a segment called Yellow, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest, Death Becomes Her, Gahan Wilson's Diner, The Bodyguard, Sidekicks, Cop and a Half, Super Mario Brothers, the movie, In Search of the Obelisk, a short film, Judgment Night, Grumpy Old Men, Under Pressure, the making of the Abyss, Clean Slate, Forrest Gump, Blown Away, Richie Rich, Tales from the Crypt, 7 episodes, The Quick and the Dead, The Perez Family, Judge Dredd, Father of the Bride Part 2, Grumpier Old Men, Sergeant Bilko, Eraser, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Fools Rush In, Volcano, Contact, Mouse Hunt, The Odd Couple, Parent Trap, Holy Man, Practical Magic, Siegfried and Roy, The Magic Box, a documentary, Stuart Little, Reindeer Games, What Lies Beneath,
Wow.
Castaway, What Women Want, The Mexican, The Mummy Returns, Serendipity, Showtime, Lilo and Stitch, Stuart Little 2, Made in Manhattan, Identity, Lara Croft Tomb Raider, The Cradle of Life, Van Helsing, Revenge of the Mummies, Mummy the Ride, The Polar Express, The Wild, Night at the Museum, Beowulf, Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian, G.I. Joe, Rise of the Cobra, A Christmas Carol, The A-Team, Captain America, The First Avenger, The Avengers, Flight, The Croods, Red 2, Night at the Museum, Secret of the Tomb, Back to the Future, Doc Brown Saves the World video short, Allied, Ready Player One, Avengers, Infinity War, The Predator, Welcome to Marwen, Avengers Endgame, Warrior Predator short film, Predator Hunting Grounds video game in 2020, Horrorverse full movie short film 2020, and recently, which is an undiscovered year, is called The Witches, which I wonder if that's the remake of The Witches. Yeah, it's a remake of Roald Dahl's The Witches, which we'll have to go on about the original one.
Sounds good.
But in any case, I think that's other than that, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about this film?
Oh, well, I don't know. I wanted to say I'm sorry for all the glitches I've had. Sorry if I wasn't properly active throughout the whole discussion because I also have headache and I'm not fully in focus. So I apologize for that.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
Thank
That's
you.
okay. I'm sure the audience understands if we have an audience.
Thank you.
So, one of the things I wanted to say is some location shooting occurred in Lancaster and other places in Los Angeles County, but the majority of the movie was shot in an enormous soundstage at Sony Studios in Culver City, the same studio that once housed the set for the Emerald City in The Wizard of Oz in 1939.
Oh.
Let's see. This was Frederick Coffin's final acting role before his death on July 30th, 2003, at the age of 60. Trying to think who Frederick Coffin was. Sure, it'll say in the IMDb. The book seen in Ed's car as he picks up Paris is Being and Nothingness by Jean-Paul Sartre. Okay, I guess. The song the prisoner starts to sing as he is led to the bathroom is I Got Stripes, a prison song by Johnny Cash, who died the year after the film's release.
Oh.
That's kind of interesting. And James Mangold, according to James Mangold, when shooting the film in studio and using a heavy rain backdrop, a water system was used to simulate the cold rain. As a result of working on such a water-drenched set for long hours, it wasn't uncommon for the cast to become afflicted with the common cold. John Cusack and Amanda Peet would later go on to play the lead roles in 2012. in 2009, where they played a recently divorced couple. Also, John Cusack played a limousine driver in 2012, while his character in Identity is a driver. Ray Liotta's character was asked where he was heading with his con. His reply was Carson City. John Cusack was in the movie Con Air in 1997, where the cons took over a plane in Carson City. Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Marshall Bell and Jake Busey both appeared in the movie Starship Troopers in 1997.
Cool.
So, other than that, let's see. James Mangold, the character played by Jake Busey, is humming one of the lines of the famous songs. The next Mangold movie was the cash biopic Walk the Line in 2005.
Ooh.
So, I guess if you watch the movie Identity, you kind of get a prelude to his next movie. And James Mangold was also the director of Wolverine's The Wolverine movie, a standalone movie, and Logan later on.
Oh, cool.
Other than that, I think that's all the time we have for today, folks. So thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. Thank you for listening to our ramblings.
Yeah, thank you all, and I'm sorry once again for not being in full focus tonight.
That's okay. I think you were in enough focus. And if you weren't, I guess you'll have an identity crisis. Oh, did I just say that, folks? In any case,
Nice one.
well, after we get off the air, we're gonna figure out who the hell he is, anyway. So, but he's definitely an imposter, folks. In any case, thank you for listening and enjoy. We'll have some more exciting stuff next week as we go back into the psycho atmosphere.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.